All right, we're going to go ahead and get started then. And we have a somewhat small group, so absolutely take advantage of this. If you have any questions, whether they're on topic or not, just feel free to add them, and we'll see where we go from there. All right, thanks for joining us. This is Bob Coppedge, and we're going to do another one of our webinars. Our topic for this time is basically a high-altitude roadmap for Microsoft for 2018. And yep, we're almost through March, but it seemed like a good topic. I've had a number of conversations with some of our customers and other folks that dealt with some of these issues, so thought we'd go through it. So hopefully you can both hear me and you can see the shared screen. If not, well, if you can't hear me, then, well, anyway. So this is, for those of you not aware, Microsoft. We're a Microsoft partner. On the silver side, we're a managed service provider. We do a number of these events each month. I think we have 4 this month, and I think 3 or 4 next month. Here's our NASCAR slide, yada, yada, yada. We are a managed service provider, but we have several of our customers already have IT departments, so we call this co-mits or co-managed IT. And one thing we just added within the last month is actually Simplex-TM, which is training. And we also, on our blog, simplex-it.com/blog, or you can email here, we actually have a free, about an hour and a half or so training class on Windows 10 that is absolutely free, and it's open to the public. So take advantage of that stuff. We also do a lot of SQL work, project management work, so on and so forth. Don't want to spend too much time on that. My book finally came out early this year, A CEO's Survival Guide to Information Technology. Yay, it's exciting, blah, blah, blah. And coming up, we have a lunch seminar at our office, Intro to Internet of Things, with a guest speaker from Amazon. He's basically an Amazon evangelist for their offering. And we also have end user IT training, managing your inbox with Outlook rules. And this one's going to be interesting, your online reputation and why it matters. We talk about the online reputation a lot, both from an organizational and individual standpoint. We've got a speaker who pretty much works on that sort of stuff, who is going to give some insights into that. That one should be kind of interesting. So, some caveats to this. Caveats are, number one, this is focused on the small to medium business world, so we're not really taking a look at enterprise level stuff and the like. The second is that it's my opinion. So a lot of things are going to be what's actually planned by Microsoft or what Microsoft is planning to do. But I'll give insights. And we're talking about Microsoft here, so nothing is certain. And a lot of information here is taken from redmondmag.com, which is an organization that it's not owned by Microsoft, certainly, but they focus a lot on Microsoft and what Microsoft is doing. So if you go to redmondmag.com, you may have to register, but they actually put out some roadmap documents and updates and all that. It's a good site, good magazine. So with that, let's go into this. The topics we're going to talk about, and I'm not going to talk, I'll talk about Azure a little bit, but that was the one topic I was running into time limitations. We'll talk a little bit about Azure, but really we're focusing on the small to medium business side. So we're going to talk Windows 10s, phones, Teams and Skype for business. That's a big one. Office 2019, 365, both Office and Microsoft 365. Yes, there's a difference. Windows Server, SharePoint Exchange, and then what's going on with mobile apps. And we don't have a lot of time, so we're not going to dig too deep into any of those. I'm just going to go back and forth. So let's start with Windows 10. Windows 10, there's basically going to be, what Microsoft is doing is they're trying to move into a model, and for operating systems like Windows Server or Windows 10, they have gone into a biannual update. So you had Windows 8, then Windows 8.1, then Windows 10. So there will be a major release every 4 years, and then in between, at the 2-year mark, there would be what we would call an R2. So you had Windows Server 2008, 2008 R2 was in 2010, then 2012, then 2012 R2 was in 14, then 2016. They're now going to be moving into a semi-annual. So what Microsoft is going to try to do is they're going to be updating doing major product, I shouldn't even say major product releases, but feature updates and releases twice a year. So you're going to see a rollout around Q2 and then around Q4. They've already done that for the most part with Office and with Windows 10. They're also going to, we're going to talk about this, they're also going to be doing this with Server as well. That's in addition to that biannual update. So you're really going to see 2 updates per year, and then a release, then 2 updates per year for a couple years, and then a major release. So there's actually some method to the madness there if you can follow that. That's not to say they're not doing the same thing with Office. They're doing that every 3 years. So, but once you get an idea of what kind of tap dance they're doing, you can kind of see what's going on. There's what's called Redstone 4, which is a Q1, Q2. They're still adding more and more features, and the features for the most part you're going to see are on 2 types of streams going simultaneously. One is to enhance the experience of that single user who is trying to do things in this always online, always interactive community. One of the things that will be added is, in theory, it will be near share. Near share is where you can share something or share files with someone via a Bluetooth connection. So literally, if they're near enough that you can connect by devices. You can think of it in terms of if someone wants to see a device and they're just got their mobile phone or whatever. That's going to be nice. I haven't really seen that yet, and I'm not exactly sure how the security implications are going to be, but and then timeline. Now timeline is going to require some of the application buy-in, but timeline is where you're going to be able to see what activities users did based on an individual application. You can kind of see it on an operating system standpoint by looking at events. You can see what patches, what activities, whatever. This is going to be more on on an individual application side. So, and then Redstone 5, which is Q3 and 4. That's going to be more, and there really hasn't been a lot of stuff announced for the Redstone 5. There's been some features that Microsoft is talking less about that were supposedly in Redstone 4, but we'll see where Redstone 5 comes out. So in addition to this, now keep in mind that Microsoft is still going to be doing security patching throughout the year, but that's going to be more of a reactionary. When there are security exploits that are discovered, that things can happen, whatever, Microsoft will, famous last words, do their due diligence, do their due diligence and get those releases out. This is specifically talking about feature releases. So that's what's going on for Windows 10. And again, I stress, pay attention to their changing of their patterns, their release patterns, because that's going to give you, especially if you're with an organization that is looking to make some plans as far as when to upgrade or when to make changes or the like. So, phones. Originally, I said I had just one line said this screen left intentionally blank. But then I realized I need to be a little bit less cavalier about it. Mobile phones, Windows phones are dead. Okay, there's no more development for those. Boo-hoo. They're gone, all that. However, Microsoft, as you'll notice, they have been pretty successful with their Surface line. They've got the Surface tablets. They've got the Surface books, which are basically laptops. They've got whatever their Surface large-scale tabletop thing is. So they've got that, and rumor has gone around about Microsoft coming out with an actual Surface phone, which would essentially be running a smaller set of Windows OS on obviously a smaller processor and all that kind of fun stuff. Now, Microsoft has been beaten up soundly enough times in the phone business that I would think that they wouldn't be eager to get into that again without having some compelling reason. And the only thing I can come up with is if they go really gangbusters on the Office 365 collaboration tools like Teams and the like, and have some really compelling integration with those on an enterprise level, then I can see the Surface phone being useful. However, since that hasn't happened yet, and Teams is still a work in progress, and we'll talk about that in a moment, my opinion is they're probably looking at it, but at best there'll be an announcement of saying, yes, we're going to do it in late in this year, and then maybe actually come out with something next year. Wouldn't hold my breath, and especially for the small medium businesses, I don't think it's that big of a deal one way or the other. And yes, I'm a Microsoft partner. Yes, I'm a Microsoftie, yay, but I'm not going to, bow down to everything that they do. This is the most interesting of all of the updates from Microsoft. And it comes down to one word, and that's collaboration. Collaboration is the big buzzword whenever you're talking about services that are with a workforce. And Microsoft, especially if you take a look at some of the stuff that Google has done and all, I don't want to say they've been playing catch up, but they've been playing. It's as much of a learning curve for Microsoft as it is anything else. And if you think about it, whenever I talk to somebody about any of the Google tools versus the Microsoft tools, is Google approaches things from the individual that works within an organization, and Microsoft comes at it from an organization that works with individuals. So depending upon how your priorities and how your organization is structured, one perspective may work better than another. Okay, so. And here's the thing, is Microsoft has been using Skype for Business for the last 4 or 5 years as that's their, for lack of a better word, go-to-meeting. They introduced about a year ago or so Microsoft Teams, which is kind of, and I've been using this term and I got to stop using it because it's starting to become untrue, which was kind of like a Slack copycat. Slack is a great tool for people to chat, to share files, to do all sorts of things in terms of very simple collaboration of text messages, of file sharing, and the like. With Teams, you're actually looking to do much more. So much so that Microsoft has pretty much stopped any active development on new features for the Skype for Business product, with one exception, and we'll get into that in a minute. And instead is focusing on using Teams and rolling the features of Skype for Business into Teams. And they've already done that, so the majority of things you can do in Skype for Business, you can now do in Teams, with some exceptions. Now, what is Teams? Teams is another service that's included in most Office 365 subscriptions. So the odds are, if you have Office 365 that includes Skype for Business, you've got access to Teams. There are some caveats to that, depending upon how you've set your Office 365 tenant up, whether or not you can see those things automatically, certainly whether or not you've assigned the licenses to people. So there's some tweaks that you have to do. But the Teams allows you to create groups and to create organizations within your organization, and to share chats, to do screen sharing, screen connects, all that kind of fun stuff. So first of all, Skype for Business development is pretty much gone. The features for Skype for Business is being rolled out into Teams. In theory, what I think what's happening is that Microsoft is positioning Teams to be their collaboration environment moving forward. And if you think in terms of, for those of us who've been around long enough in the IT world, about 10 years or so ago, Microsoft was doing the same thing with SharePoint. And about 10 years prior to that, they were doing the same thing with their first rollouts of Exchange. And I think Microsoft is doing the same thing now with Teams being at the core center. So one of the things that's going to happen is there's going to be Cortana, which is Microsoft's Series, their voice activation. Microsoft is going to be integrating Cortana into Teams, so that using Teams, a person will be able to say, hey, place this call, send this document, do these things. It's going to be much more of a natural integration. And one thing to keep in mind whenever somebody talks about Cortana, and especially if they're talking about it versus Siri or versus Google's Voice or whatever, is keep in mind Cortana was designed from the ground up to be a data-driven tool. It was not as much of a voice recognition, human recognition, and this is one of the reasons why it's taken so long, in my opinion, for it to reach quote-unquote maturity. And that means that it's going to be a lot easier for Cortana to be a front end for applications, especially on the Microsoft platform. So don't dismiss the voice integration that Cortana brings or the like down the road. I think it's going to be pretty interesting. Now, Skype for Business isn't going anywhere. So, first of all, there still is going to be an on-premise Skype for Business server that's offered by Microsoft. That's going to stay for organizations that want to have the Skype for Business functionality on their hardware. their servers. That's going to stay and probably undergo some enhancements and the like. But otherwise, it's Teams. It's all Teams. At this point, for companies that are starting to go into Office 365, especially if the collaboration tools are yeah, that'd be cool if we had that too. So it's not a core function. My recommendation is deploy Teams. Go with Teams. Use Skype for Business as a fallback. Reason being is because in a year, with every release of every product, Teams is going to be moving more and more to the forefront, and Skype for Business is going to be moving more and more to the background. Okay. By the way, if you have any questions at all, go ahead and type or text something in the chat window. Office 2019. Remember I said it's every 2 years with an R2, or every 4 years for major releases, and then every 2 years there's an R2 release for the operating systems, desktops, and servers. For these products, for like Office and SQL and the like, it's a 3-year release schedule. So we had Office 2007, 2010, 2013, 2016. Oh, look, it's 2019. Now, the preview should be out pretty soon. Actually, it might already be out now that I think of it. With the release to Q4. It won't run on Windows earlier than Windows 10. Okay, so it won't work on that. And remember, that's also going to have some impact as far as for people who are doing terminal server or remote desktop. So you're going to have some issues. Any development on connecting to the H323 video standard? Honestly, I have no idea on that one. I haven't heard anything one way or the other. But actually, Jim, let me take a look into that, and I'll see what I can find out on it. Okay. There's definitely going to be more. I view this one so far, at least, as an evolutionary, not a revolutionary, because really what I'm hearing as far as the Office products and the like is there's going to be more tool or more security functions. There's going to be more big data analytic tools on the Excel side. There's going to be more integrating animation into the PowerPoints, but I'm not hearing at least anything that's going to be huge. There were some really freaky announcements that Microsoft kind of backed off of as far as 365. Excuse me. So for companies that are using Office 365 for their Exchange mailbox, but they're not, so they're using it for their Exchange mailbox, they're using it for their Skype for Business / Teams, they're using it for their OneDrive for Business licensing, but they're getting their Office licensing from other, whether it be OEM, they bought it with the machine, or they're buying it, with a geological dig, we just buy the license, all that kind of thing. I think Microsoft is going to try to add more restrictions on the technical side under the name of security that are going to try to encourage people to get their office licensing through Office 365, which in most cases is actually, it makes sense. It's just an easier licensing model. They kind of they were making I don't want to say threats, that's the wrong term, but they were definitely making comments about making it tougher to use, like especially OEM licensing or one-off licensing for Office 365. I'm not sure they're going to be doing that because they haven't talked about it as much over the past month or so. Okay. Office 365 and Microsoft 365. Yes, there's a difference. So last year, and we did a webinar on it, it's up on our YouTube channel. Microsoft introduced what they called Microsoft 365 to run alongside of Office 365, because what could possibly be confusing about that? What Microsoft basically did, Microsoft 365 pertains to the collaboration tools, the Office licensing for the desktop, and the Skype for Business, OneDrive, yada yada yada. With Microsoft 365, they included all of the Office 365 components. So Office 365 is technically a subset of Microsoft 365. Then they added to it the actual Windows 10 desktop licensing and added to it some of the enhanced security. So now, with a Microsoft 365 license, you will have the license for essentially everything that you run on a desktop, except for the server cal licensing, if you connect to servers. It is an attempt of Microsoft, and then you can also get the telephony by going with the E5 level. So you can basically be running a very small Soho office with just the Microsoft 365 licensing. Now, there are all sorts of reasons why this is kind of a weird combination. First of all, when you buy the traditional laptop or desktop or Windows device, it usually comes with the licensing, and it isn't until you get to the scale, large enough scale where the getting the enterprise licensing makes sense. And since this licensing doesn't include the server cals, you've got other license models. It's just a little bit confusing, quite honestly, on my part. But that's the way Microsoft's doing things, and I think you're going to see changes and enhancements to this licensing, to the Microsoft 365 licensing, over the next 6 months to a year. It was just announced last summer at the last partner conference. It was just really released in September through November of last year, and I'm having some meetings with actually a couple of Microsoft people who are they're actually asking me for clarification on some of this stuff. So that gives you an idea or question there. One of the other things that's going to happen is that you're going to have some transcription capabilities are going to be added to Office 365, and this is going to be interesting. There are a number of parts of Office 365 that people don't recognize. Teams is one of them, but also Planner, which is kind of like an online project light, project management. They're going to open that up to guests, and I think you're going to see more and more of that type of activity on 365. There's also going to be more usage reporting. Right now, it's lame in terms of who's using what, how much they're using feature-wise and resource-wise. And you're also going to see more, and these are already out there. And right now they're more on the business side, but if you have a small company, there are a number of business applications, both for invoicing, for CRM, for order processing, point of sale, all that kind of stuff is included in a lot of the business 365 licensing. And they haven't gotten a lot of attention. Now, Microsoft has made applications available for small business. These are small business apps. Okay, they've done it before, and they've done it horribly. I have yet to really go through and run any of these apps yet, so I can't tell you how good or bad they are, but there's definitely, Microsoft is trying to become a one-stop shopping with the Office 365 and with the Microsoft 365 to small business owners, so that instead of going out and buying a computer and then buying QuickBooks and then buying Google stuff and then buying Office and all that, they're looking to try to get you into a Office 365. So, question, will you be able to share video with audio, i.e. YouTube, in a Team or Skype for Business? Yes, that's going to be one of the functions that they're going to be doing in Team. I'm not sure they're going to be doing that for Skype for Business, but yeah, the ability to share any kind of multimedia through Teams meeting is definitely part of the release schedule. Okay, I'm 1 for 2 on questions. Okay. Windows Server. Now, the server product was not on the semi-annual release schedule that Office and Windows 10 were. It was pretty much much more of a we'll release things when they're ready and all. With 2018, Microsoft is moving to that semi-annual. So feature updates are now going to be released twice a year. So you'll basically get release 1, release 2 in year 1, release 3, release 4 in year 2. Then you'll get that R2 release that we talked about earlier, and then repeat it for another 2 years, and then the version update. That's more or less the goal. Now, at any point in time, I still think Microsoft is going to try at some point, and this is just me, I think they're going to try to get rid of the Server 2016 Windows 10, a definitive version number, and get back and kind of go away walk away from that. Why? Part of it is because everything they're trying to do, just like everybody else, is they're trying to get into recurring revenue models. And recurring revenue models are harder to do if you basically sit down and say, I've got this version right now works for me fine. Why do I need to buy the next version when it comes out 4 years from now? If we lose that 4-year block, or the 2-year block actually, and we just see it as we want to have all of the updates and we want to be protected, it becomes easier for Microsoft. Also, if they don't have to worry as much about maintaining and managing servers that haven't been upgraded for 6 years, it makes it easier for them in terms of their service and support requirements. So expect that. One of the other things is Project Honolulu. Project Honolulu is kind of interesting. Those of you who have been around as long as I have, we are used to using the administrative consoles, where we have an administrative console installed on this workstation and it connects to the server. So we can manage multiple servers from this one application. But it's an actual thick app that is installed on the workstation or on a server, and yada, yada, yada. As the operating system and the networks have matured, we've been able to manage more and more servers from that one device. Project Honolulu essentially replaces it with a web-based server management tools, which gets us a lot more interesting in terms of both remote management and how do we configure and maintain the appropriate security for structuring, all that kind of fun stuff. So that's one of the other things they're looking to do. So that's of interest. And then the two major projects that are being updated, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these because most companies are now on the 365 side of things, is Exchange 2018 and SharePoint 2018. Now, the big things on these guys is they're going to be, the preview releases are going to be in the next few months, and they'll probably get full release out to public in Q4. Security is going to be a big part of these guys. Now, from the small medium business side, there is almost no compelling reason not to go Office 365 if you're into an upgrade situation. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this, with the exception of saying that usually Microsoft at the end of the day is running Exchange and SharePoint for their email in the cloud and for the SharePoint Online functionality. And they usually follow upgrades over the 6-month period. So you're probably looking at upgrading up to Exchange 2018, probably sometime in, I would say, the second quarter would be 2019, or second quarter of next year, 2019. By the way, I should point out that Microsoft's fiscal year actually ends on June 30th. Everything I'm talking about here is calendar year. Okay. So the big question is going to be what happens when 365 moves to 2018. Well, for those of you who remember, Microsoft pretty much dropped the RTP over RPC over HTTP method of connecting to an Exchange box. And because it was terribly insecure. And that pretty much wiped out any connectivity without some finagling, and some very bad finagling, Office 2007. So Office 2007 can't connect to Office 365 simply because Office 2007 doesn't know how to be secure for the connection, at least to the level that we want today. I suspect a similar thing, so we may be saying goodbye to Office 2010 connectivity for Office 365 in the first half of next year as well, when this happens. Okay, so companies need to be aware of that. Now, remember, when we talked about the next version of Office is going to only run on Windows 10. So there is, when you have gone to the cloud, you are accepting a certain level of responsibility, because those guys are going to, and I hate to say it, it's appropriate, they are going to maintain what are considered to be best security practices. And the older the software is, the less likely that best security practice existed when that software was put out, and probably can't be retrofitted. So as you go with 365 or any of these things, you're going to have a problem maintaining that connectivity with old stuff. And a lot of us are seeing that now with companies who are insisting on using web browsers that can't handle some of the new TLS, or I shouldn't say new, it's been out for years. So you're seeing more and more people who say, my Internet Explorer on Windows 7 doesn't work for this site. Well, yeah, because Internet Explorer is just not secure. So the cloud is great, but we have to recognize the fact that we have to update things as we go. One last thing, and because we're just about out of time, mobile apps. Now, Microsoft has made a great commitment, and I think it was a brilliant move, to really support a lot of mobile apps and to support Microsoft resources and products accessible through non-Microsoft devices. However, one of the things they did in order to do that was they put out a lot of applications as quickly as they possibly could, and they weren't necessarily the best. Microsoft has done some acquisitions. They've bought some companies and the like, and you're already seeing they made kind of an announcement earlier this week that they're going to be dropping support of some of the iOS apps for Outlook Web Access over the next couple of months. And the reason being is because they weren't very good. I don't think, and it's still preliminary, I don't think this is going to people who are just natively, just adding it and using the built-in tools for Android or for iOS devices. I think it's the people who are actually using some of the iOS built-in applications. There may be some issues there. Keep an eye out for that. I think Microsoft will be doing more of this, and in theory, it should be we're dropping support for this because we've added that. That's the theory. Now, sometimes Microsoft doesn't get the timing right. So Microsoft will, they will add this they'll remove this feature or this function for security's sake, and then 3 months later they'll add the solution to it. I hope they won't do it that way in terms of their mobile apps, but the jury's out for that. And that pretty much is our topic for today. Usually one of the things that we do is we sit back at the end of these things. Well, first of all, are there any questions? And while I'm waiting to hear if there are any questions, if any of you are interested in talking about this either from a licensing standpoint or from a migration standpoint, one of the things that I should also mention as far as Azure goes, the couple of key things that I think are happening with Azure right now is one is the positioning of the SMB market offering in terms of remote desktops is very sloppy right now. I really am hoping they're going to consolidate that. And the other is there's an aggressive move on Microsoft's part in the Azure world to really push Azure as a both backup service and a business continuity disaster recovery service for small and medium businesses. I'm not sure they're quite there yet, but they're getting there. So those are the two big things from an Azure standpoint that I think for the small and medium businesses you're going to see a lot of cool things from that aspect. And keep in mind, Microsoft's end of fiscal year is June 30th. And what that means is that if you are looking to do any kind of Microsoft licensing acquisition, whether it be open value licensing or 365 licensing, Business 365 or Office 365, or Dynamics or anything, there are almost always good incentives for people doing it before June 30th. And those incentives are usually either financial resources that are given to partners to assist in the migration, or discounts for licensing, or enhanced features or whatever. So if you're considering doing something, now is the sweet time to do it. And if you have any questions or issues on that, Bob at Simplex-IT.com. So, not seeing any questions. So, Jim, I'm going to look into the video question that you had. And other than that, thank you all for coming. Yay. Hopefully this was useful.